What if one day you discovered that a handful of things you've spent years worrying about suddenly stopped holding any real importance? As we move through different stages of life, our perspectives transform in unexpected ways. Sometimes we realize that the energy we poured into certain stresses or ambitions no longer feels necessary. By the time we reach our 70s, a fresh kind of clarity often emerges, one not dictated by frantic timelines or external pressures, but by the quiet understanding that we've learned enough to know what truly deserves our focus. This isn't about surrendering, nor is it about indifference. It's about finally having the wisdom and the permission to direct your vitality toward the people, activities, and values that matter most. In this script, we're exploring 7 things that gradually become less relevant after age 70. They're the kinds of concerns and habits that might have weighed heavily on you earlier in life: social expectations, unresolved regrets, the constant urge to chase fleeting trends. With age, you learn that many of these fixations either resolve themselves or simply dissolve when you recognize how much energy they require. Letting go of them doesn't mean caring less about life. It means caring more about what sustains your well-being and peace of mind. By stepping away from these worries, you make room for deeper health, more fulfilling connections, and a greater appreciation of life's day-to-day beauty. As you listen to these insights, notice which resonate with your own experiences. Which anxieties or thought patterns are you still carrying that might be ripe for release? You may find yourself reflecting on your past choices, your current relationships, and the dreams you still wish to pursue. And in that reflection, there's an invitation to let go of what no longer serves you so you can step forward unburdened. Because there's a kind of freedom that can only come with time, a freedom earned through living all those years and gathering real, tangible wisdom. This is your permission slip to stand tall in that freedom and shape the remaining chapters of your story with a clearer head and lighter heart. Let's begin. 1. Shedding the weight of others' judgments. There's a turning point in life where you suddenly realize people's opinions aren't carved in stone. They're fleeting perceptions, often based on incomplete information or their own biases. In your youth, it's common to feel anxious about what relatives, friends, co-workers, or even strangers might think of your decisions. You might stress over whether your career is impressive enough, your clothes stylish enough, or your home tidy enough. These worries can become so ingrained that you start making life choices primarily to avoid disapproval or gossip. But by the time you turn 70, you've likely accumulated enough experiences and heartbreaks to see that external validation is rarely as fulfilling as it seems. You understand that people's judgments aren't always objective critiques. Sometimes they're reflections of their own insecurities or envy. An acquaintance named Lucinda discovered this in her early 70s. She'd spent decades in a high-pressure job, rising through the ranks and dealing with endless scrutiny of her every decision. She was known for her impeccable suits, precise manners, and meticulous living space. Yet, after she retired, she found the weight of those expectations unexpectedly lifted. Freed from her workplace environment, she no longer felt compelled to appear perfect. She let her hair grow out naturally, switched to wearing comfortable, flowy clothes, and even started painting in her garage without worrying about how others might judge her new hobby. The sense of relief she felt was immeasurable. That's not to say you stop caring entirely about how you present yourself to the world. Rather, you care in a way that aligns with your self-respect, not others' critiques. By 70, you realize that letting your neighbors' or relatives' opinions drive your decisions is a path to perpetual worry. People will have opinions no matter what you do, and often, they'll forget about what they thought of you sooner than you imagine. With this comes a gentle acceptance of what truly matters. Whether you're at peace with your own choices when you lay your head on the pillow at night. It's a relief to trust your own perspective after a lifetime of trying to please everyone else. You start to tune out the noise, focusing instead on the voices that genuinely come from a place of love and understanding. It doesn't make you antisocial or aloof. It makes you grounded. And that groundedness nourishes a quieter, stronger sense of self that's no longer on the market for anyone else's approval. You become more selective about whose input you value, and that selectivity is a hallmark of emotional maturity. Once you step into this space, you'll find life becomes simpler. Decisions no longer carry the extra burden of, what will they think? Instead, you weigh your choices based on your own moral compass and real-world constraints. And ironically, this authenticity can lead to deeper, more genuine connections with others, because you're no longer hiding behind a facade shaped by public opinion. You're showing up as you truly are, with honesty and self-assuredness. And those who appreciate you for who you are will remain, while those who need you to fit a particular mold will naturally drift away. And that's perfectly fine. Your worth has never depended on their validation, and it never will. 2. The decline of chasing trends. Our culture bombards us with the message that staying in the loop is essential, whether it's the newest tech gadget, the latest style in clothing, or the hottest diet that promises a miraculous transformation. In your younger years, it's easy to get swept into this current, fearing that if you don't keep up, you'll appear out of touch or be left behind. Maybe it starts in high school, when wearing certain shoes or listening to certain bands feels like a matter of social survival. Then it evolves into adulthood with a push to upgrade your phone every year, purchase furniture that matches the latest home decor magazine, or enroll in whatever fitness class everyone's raving about. But the older you get, the more obvious it becomes that these trends are cyclical and largely superficial. By the time you hit 70, you've witnessed entire lifestyles and fashions come and go multiple times. You know firsthand that what's in today can be out in a heartbeat, only to resurface again in another decade. You start realizing that participating in every new trend or upgrading everything just because there's a new version is both exhausting and expensive. More importantly, it often does little to actually elevate your day-to-day happiness or sense of satisfaction. Take Ernesto, for example, who is 76. He was once a tech enthusiast who prided himself on always having the latest phone, laptop, or tablet. He jumped to pre-order the newest model the second it was announced, believing it gave him an edge in productivity or social status. Over time, however, he noticed a pattern. His excitement for the new device would fade in a matter of weeks, replaced by the humdrum of everyday usage, and the device would soon be outdated when the next iteration arrived. Ernesto grew tired of the endless chase, and at 70, he decided to cut back, choosing to upgrade only when the features truly met a need. The rest of the time, he saved money and found he was less stressed. It's not about resisting change or refusing to learn new things. Plenty of seniors adopt new technologies, explore modern fitness routines, or try out contemporary fashion, if and when it genuinely appeals to them. The distinction is you're no longer driven by a fear of missing out. Instead, you make choices that actually align with your comfort, budget, and personal style. When you're young, you might worry that if you don't keep up with trends, you'll lose relevance. But by 70, you see that relevance is not determined by how up-to-date your wardrobe is or how many features your smartphone boasts. It's determined by how authentically you engage with the world around you and the people who matter to you. There's a certain grace in realizing you don't need to chase anything or impress anyone. If a new trend or innovation looks interesting and can truly enhance your life, great, explore it. But if it doesn't, you can comfortably let it pass. By stepping out of that endless loop, you give yourself more room for what genuinely fuels your curiosity and brings you joy. Whether it's gardening, cooking, reading, or traveling to places you've always wanted to see, you now have the time and the mental space to engage in activities that bring real satisfaction rather than fleeting novelty. 3. Regrets that lose their grip. In your younger years, regrets can loom large. Replaying moments you wish you could rewrite, a job you declined, a relationship that ended abruptly, or words spoken in anger that you can't take back. These regrets sometimes burrow deep into your thoughts, periodically surfacing to cast a shadow over your present. You might wonder, what if, or if only, as you try to piece together how different life would be if you'd taken a different path. This cycle can be both emotionally draining and self-defeating, keeping you trapped in a loop of thinking about what could have been instead of focusing on what can still be. After 70, you gain enough hindsight to see your life as a complete landscape rather than a series of isolated incidents. You You've accumulated not just regrets, but also triumphs, joys, friendships, and lessons learned. The regrets that once appeared so monumental are now balanced against a broader tapestry of experiences. You start to grasp that many of the decisions you labeled as mistakes were actually stepping stones that led you to unforeseen blessings. Perhaps that career you never pursued allowed you to stay closer to family, or that relationship that ended freed you for a deeper companionship down the road. Take the story of Martin, now 81. In his 40s, he had a chance to move abroad for work, but he chose not to go because of his aging parents and worries about uprooting his children from their schools and friends. For years, he couldn't help but replay that decision, imagining the adventure that might have been. Yet as time went on, Martin saw how staying put allowed him to forge tighter bonds with his parents in their final years. And his children benefited from a consistent social circle that helped them flourish into adulthood. What once felt like a missed adventure evolved into a heartfelt chapter that shaped his family's closeness. In his words, "I realized my regret was just a story I told myself in moments of doubt. When I saw the bigger picture, I realized everything worked out as it needed to." By your 70s, regrets can lose their sting once you reinterpret them not as failures, but as lessons. You understand that the version of you who made those choices was doing the best they could with the information, emotional capacity, and life circumstances at the time. There's a release that comes with no longer berating your younger self for not knowing what you know now. That self-forgiveness is liberating. It can open doors to fresh opportunities in the present, opportunities to start a project, reconnect with an old friend, or simply enjoy your day without the weight of what if. Of course, some regrets might still linger in subtle ways, especially if they concern loved ones you've lost or significant paths not taken. But even those can be softened with acceptance and gratitude for the experiences you did have. Instead of longing to turn back time, you find it more beneficial to cherish the life you've built, the people in it, and the prospects still within reach. Regrets don't define you. They become quieter markers of growth that can guide your future decisions with clearer wisdom and gentler self-compassion. 4. Breaking free from the comparison trap. From elementary school report cards to social media brag posts in adulthood, the urge to compare can follow us through many stages. Whether it's comparing salaries, homes, achievements, or even grandchildren's accomplishments, the world encourages a cycle of who has it better. But by 70, many realize that comparison is a game no one truly wins. There's always someone with something you don't have, and chasing an external benchmark of success rarely leads to lasting fulfillment. The problem with comparisons is they're built on incomplete knowledge. You might see a neighbor with a sparkling new car, but you're unaware of the debt they're juggling. Or you might envy a friend's extended family gatherings without knowing the tensions that bubble beneath the surface. We often compare our behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's curated highlight reel. In doing so, we set ourselves up for dissatisfaction. Eleanor, 77, learned this the hard way when she joined an online social group for retirees. She was excited to connect with others at her life stage, but soon found herself envying photos of exotic cruises, big family reunions, and newly remodeled homes. She felt her simpler, quieter life was somehow lacking. It took a frank conversation with a friend who confided about the immense stress and debt behind those fancy cruises for Eleanor to see that appearances can be deceiving. Once she grasped that many of these posts were more about show than genuine contentment, she stopped measuring her own life against them. She closed her social media accounts for a while, devoted more time to gardening, reading, and cooking, and discovered she was happier focusing on her own hobbies rather than scrolling through other people's snapshots. The beauty of reaching your 70s is that you've witnessed enough ups and downs, both in your own life and in others, to know that no one's existence is as straightforward as it looks. That knowledge can free you. If you start feeling that little pang of envy or the urge to measure up, you can remind yourself that everyone's journey is unique and filled with hidden battles. Moreover, the measure of a fulfilling life isn't found in the quantity of possessions or accolades, but in the depth of gratitude and the quality of relationships. Instead of looking sideways to gauge where you stand, you begin to look inward. Am I content with the connections I have? Am I nurturing the relationships that truly matter? Am I spending my time in ways that bring me peace and curiosity? These questions guide you toward a more authentic sense of fulfillment, one that's not contingent on surpassing someone else's achievements. It's about living in alignment with your values and making peace with your own story. After all, you've made it this far with unique experiences, perspectives, and strengths. That itself is worth celebrating and cherishing without the relentless burden of comparison. 5. Knowing when to respect the body's limits. In our younger years, many of us operate under the assumption that pushing ourselves to the brink is a virtue. We take pride in working late, carrying heavy objects without asking for help, or recovering quickly from a sprain or cold. There's a certain societal admiration for being unstoppable, as if needing rest or assistance is a sign of weakness. We internalize this narrative and often ignore our own body's signals telling us to slow down, rest, or seek help. But something shifts around the age of 70. You start to see your body as a companion rather than an endless reservoir of energy. Maybe it's a recurring knee pain that doesn't bounce back the way it used to, or a sudden wave of fatigue that reminds you you're not 30 anymore. Rather than seeing these signs as betrayals, you begin to understand they're part of the natural cycle of aging. This realization can spark a desire to work with your body instead of fighting against it. After all, your body has carried you through decades of life, and it deserves care, respect, and yes, some gentleness. Consider Linda, who is 74. She always took pride in her active lifestyle, weekly tennis matches, tending a large vegetable garden, and long shopping trips without a break. But in her late 60s, arthritis began to flare up, and she found that pushing herself only resulted in longer recovery times. Initially, she was frustrated, seeing it as a personal failing. Over time, however, she embraced a different perspective. She started doing gentler exercises like yoga and swimming instead of high-intensity tennis. She also scheduled breaks during the day and allowed herself more rest without guilt. To her surprise, Linda found she was not only healthier but also happier. She had fewer aches, more energy for the activities she genuinely enjoyed, and a newfound appreciation for the subtle rhythms of her own body. Letting go of the belief that you must be self-sufficient in all things is crucial. Asking for a hand with groceries, hiring help for yard work, or deciding to drive shorter distances instead of cross-country isn't surrender, it's wisdom. Your body has served you in countless ways over the years, bearing children, performing labor, enduring stress, and recovering from illnesses. Now it's time to repay that service with kindness. When you respect your limits, you also discover a new sense of empowerment. You realize that living well isn't about constant exertion, but about preserving your vitality for the activities and relationships that truly matter. And ironically, by slowing down and taking care, you often end up with more sustainable energy to do the things you love, rather than spending your days recovering from the strain of overexertion. It's a mindset shift from proving your strength to honoring it. You're no longer concerned about appearing weak because you understand genuine strength comes from self-awareness and self-care, not from ignoring pain or exhaustion. 6. Releasing long-held grievances. Bitterness, grudges, and unresolved anger can occupy a lot of emotional space. Sometimes these feelings are rooted in legitimate hurt, a betrayal by a close friend, a conflict with a sibling over an inheritance, or a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. In younger and middle age, you might hold on to these grievances, convinced that letting go is equivalent to excusing bad behavior. Alternatively, you might fear that releasing anger could make you vulnerable to being hurt again. Yet by 70, many come to recognize that these grievances serve as emotional blocks rather than protective shields. They occupy a part of your heart where joy, connection, or forgiveness might otherwise dwell. You realize you can choose to maintain distance from a harmful relationship while still letting go of the resentment that poisons your inner life. Forgiveness or release doesn't always involve reunion or renewed closeness. It can be a purely internal process. Imagine Harriet, age 79, who hadn't spoken to a close cousin for 2 decades after a bitter dispute over their grandmother's will. Each family gathering was marked by tension and carefully orchestrated avoidance. Harriet carried that anger around like armor, but the armor was heavy, seeping into her other relationships. In her 70s, after attending a relative's funeral, she felt a profound sense of time slipping away. That day, she decided she was done carrying old baggage. She wrote a letter to her cousin, not to reignite their relationship necessarily, but to express her perspective, acknowledge her part in the conflict, and simply say she was letting it go. The cousin responded in kind, and they both discovered that while they might never be best friends, they no longer felt bitter. In Harriet's words, "I gave myself permission to lay that anger down. It felt like I put down a suitcase I'd been lugging around for years, and I could finally walk upright again." Holding a grudge is like clinging to a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. It's you who gets burned. By your 70s, you see how that burn can scar not just your relationship with the person in question, but also your overall emotional well-being. You also come to understand that people often hurt each other out of their own pain, confusion, or ignorance. Recognizing that doesn't excuse the hurt, but it can foster empathy that allows you to release the burden you carry. Learning to forgive yourself or others can feel like opening a window in a stuffy room. It ushers in fresh air, space, and clarity. This newfound freedom doesn't mean you forget what happened or that you condone harmful actions. Instead, you free up emotional real estate for more constructive feelings, acceptance, compassion, even cautious optimism. The relief is profound, and it allows you to invest your energies in things that genuinely enrich your life: meaningful friendships, personal passions, and the pursuit of inner peace. 7. Liberating yourself from external timelines. So much of life is governed by schedules we didn't even design. Graduate college by 22, find your life partner by 30, achieve peak career success by 40, retire by 65, and so on. We internalize these benchmarks, and if we deviate, we're left feeling we've failed or we're hopelessly behind. But by 70, you often see these timelines for what they truly are: general guidelines that don't apply to everyone. Real life is far too nuanced for such one-size-fits-all deadlines. Not hitting certain milestones on time can cause anxiety and shame in younger years. Maybe you married later than your peers, never had children, or switched careers in your 50s. Society might whisper that, "I know you're behind or off track." But if you've spent decades forging a path true to your own pace, you'll discover it has its own rewards. By 70, you don't measure success by how closely you adhere to a rigid timetable, but by the depth and authenticity of your experiences. A heartwarming example is Andrea, who went back to college at 68 to study art history. She had always been fascinated by Renaissance paintings, but never had the chance to pursue formal education on the topic when she was younger. While she initially felt sheepish about joining a class of students young enough to be her grandchildren, she soon found her life experience gave her a perspective many of them admired. Andrea realized that while she was late by conventional standards, she was precisely on time for her own life. She brought dedication, patience, and a genuine passion that enriched her learning far more than if she had done it decades earlier simply to follow a prescribed schedule. When you liberate yourself from arbitrary deadlines, you also free yourself to explore interests and possibilities that you might have dismissed in earlier years. It could be learning a new instrument, traveling to new regions, writing a memoir, or cultivating a garden you have only dreamed about. You recognize that the clock isn't an enemy, it's a reminder to stay engaged and curious. Even if you can't do things with the same stamina or agility you once had, you can still find innovative ways to bring them into your life, at your own pace, on your own terms. It's also important to release any guilt you feel for not checking certain boxes society says you should have. Maybe you never married, never had children, or never bought a home. By 70, you see that happiness doesn't hinge on these culturally emphasized milestones. You can still form meaningful relationships, cultivate creativity, and live in alignment with your personal values. Life after 70 can be the perfect time to rewrite old narratives and embrace the possibility that your most enriching chapter could be unfolding right now. Reaching your 70s doesn't mean life grinds to a halt. In many ways, it's a chance to begin anew with a deeper sense of self-knowledge. Each concern that loses its way, other people's judgments, fleeting trends, lingering regrets, unhealthy comparisons, overtaxing the body, old grudges, and external timelines, represents a layer of needless pressure you can let go. And in shedding each of these layers, you uncover an existence that is simpler and more aligned with who you truly are. The beauty of this stage is that it invites you to focus on what genuinely fosters well-being, joy, and connection. You realize you have nothing left to prove to those who don't matter, and everything to gain by nurturing relationships and passions that feed your soul. It's a time when many discover new interests, deepen old friendships, or simply relish quiet moments of reflection. Ironically, letting go of what no longer serves you isn't about giving up on life. It's about engaging with it more authentically. This process of release doesn't happen overnight. You might still catch yourself occasionally falling into old patterns, worrying about someone's opinion, or regretting a past mistake. The difference now is you recognize these tendencies for what they are, unnecessary baggage, and you have the wisdom to pause, take a breath, and ask, is this truly worth my energy? More often than not, the answer is no. When you consciously choose to let these 7 things fade in significance, you create more space for gratitude, curiosity, and even spontaneity. You might pick up a paintbrush for the first time, finally reach out to that estranged friend, or spend a quiet afternoon just marveling at the rustle of leaves outside your window. You begin to appreciate simplicity, realizing that life's sweetness often hides in the smallest details. A kind word, a good cup of tea, a walk in the fresh air. So take a moment to reflect on what you're still carrying. Are there opinions, trends, regrets, comparisons, physical expectations, grudges, or timelines that continue to weigh you down? Recognize that you hold the power to release them, and that every year you've lived has been paving the way for this moment of clarity. You've earned this grace, this right to shape your days in alignment with your personal truth, not external pressures. Embrace the freedom of this stage in life. Whether you're well into your 70s, approaching them, or simply curious about the journey ahead, these insights remind us that aging isn't just about growing older. It's about growing wiser and lighter. Every sunrise you witness offers a fresh opportunity to invest your time and energy in what truly matters. And by shedding these 7 unnecessary burdens, you open the door to a life that's not only more authentic, but also deeply and profoundly yours.